I kissed a mafia boss at my cousin's wedding, and that single reckless moment changed everything. 1 hour before that kiss, I watched him order a man's punishment, a gun pressed to someone's head, cold words about betrayal, and then his eyes found mine in the darkness. He told me to forget what I saw. He warned me to stay away. But when he pulled me onto the dance floor in front of everyone, when he whispered that I was nothing to protect me, something inside me snapped. I kissed him, right there, in front of 200 guests. His whisper still haunts me. You have no idea what you just began, Piccola. He was right. I didn't know that one kiss would drag me into a world of shadows, secrets, and a love so dangerous it could either be my salvation or my destruction. This is the story of how I fell for the most feared man in the city, and why walking away was never an option. This story will remind you that love doesn't always come wrapped in safety. Sometimes the person who seems most dangerous becomes the one who protects you most fiercely. And choosing to stay when the world tells you to run might be the bravest thing you ever do. If you've ever loved someone others couldn't understand, stay until the end. I never knew a single night could split a life in two. There was the life I had before the wedding, and the one that came after. The grounds were breathtaking, with green hills and white tents that glowed in the evening light. Towers of champagne glasses sparkled under the setting sun. My cousin Sophia married a man with quiet money, the type of wealth that never needed to announce itself. I was happy for her, I truly was. But this world was not mine. I stayed near the reception's edge, trying to smooth out the pink bridesmaid dress that felt too fragile for me. The laughter around me was light and easy, from people who had never known the fear of a looming rent payment. I drank champagne I didn't like and pretended I belonged. That was when I first saw him. He was on the stone terrace, circled by men in dark, expensive suits. He was not the center of attention, because he did not need to be. People moved around him, drawn into his orbit without realizing it. He was tall, with dark hair combed back from his face. He had a sharp jawline and cold eyes. From across the lawn, I felt the weight of his gaze. He turned his head, and for a moment, his eyes met mine. I forgot to breathe. Someone bumped my shoulder, and I quickly looked away, my heart pounding for a reason I couldn't name. Stay away from him. I jumped. My friend Clara was suddenly beside me, her face tense. Who? I asked, but I already knew the answer. Dante Moretti, she whispered, saying the name like it was poison. He is a dangerous man, Elena, truly dangerous. Not like a bad boy from a movie. He is the kind that makes people vanish. I gave a nervous laugh. You are being too dramatic. I am being serious. Clara clutched my arm. Promise me you will not go near him. I promised her. Of course I would stay away. I was not a fool. But it seemed fate had a different idea. An hour later, I went outside to get away from the noise. The gardens were peaceful, illuminated by fairy lights that made the world feel magical. I walked down a stone path, letting the cool air settle my nerves. Then I heard the voices. They were low, sharp, and full of anger. I stopped moving. Just ahead, partly concealed by a hedge, I saw 3 men standing over another man on his knees. One of them was holding a gun. You thought you could steal from us? The man with the weapon pushed the barrel into the kneeling man's temple. Moretti never forgets. My hand flew to my mouth just as he came into view. Dante Moretti. He moved like a hunter, slow and full of purpose. He did not raise his voice. He had no reason to. Take him to the East Warehouse, he said calmly. Make sure he understands the price of his betrayal. The man on the ground started to cry. I took a step back and my shoe scraped against a stone. A small gasp escaped my throat. Every one of them turned to look at me. For a second, nobody moved. Then Dante's eyes found mine, and my entire world shifted. There was no warmth in his look, no pity. There was only cold assessment. Go, he told his men, his eyes still fixed on me. They hauled the weeping man away. And just like that, I was alone in the garden with someone who saw me as a problem he needed to solve. I I am so sorry, I stammered, backing away. I saw nothing. I promise. He came closer, not with speed, but with a confidence that made escape feel impossible. You are Sophia's cousin, he said. It was a statement, not a question. I could only nod, my mouth completely dry. Elena. Hearing him say my name sent a cold shiver through me. You should return to the party, he said gently. Forget everything you saw here. I will, I whispered. I promise. I turned to go, my legs trembling beneath me. Elena. I froze but did not look back. If you speak to anyone about this, I will find out. His voice was like velvet wrapped around a blade. I ran. Back at the reception, my heart beat so fast I thought it would break through my chest. Clara was at my side in an instant. What is wrong? You look like you just saw a ghost. Nothing, I lied, putting on a smile. I just needed some fresh air. She looked doubtful. But before she could ask more questions, the music softened for a slow dance. Couples moved toward the floor. I just wanted to go home and erase the night. But the crowd made a path, and he stood before me. Dante Moretti held out his hand. Dance with me. It was not a request. Clara's hand tightened on my arm, but I knew everyone was watching us. To say no would create a scene, and drawing attention felt like the most dangerous thing I could do. I put my shaking hand into his. His skin was warm and his hold was firm, but not harsh. He guided me to the dance floor. When his other hand rested on my waist, I stopped breathing altogether. You are afraid of me, he murmured, his voice so quiet only I could hear. Should I be? I managed to reply. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Yes. We moved without speaking for a moment, and I was intensely aware of his closeness. He smelled of expensive cologne and something else. Something like smoke, whiskey, and pure danger. Why did you ask me to dance? I whispered. Because the whole room is watching, he answered simply. If I avoid you, they will think you are important. If I dance with you, they will think you are nothing. The words were a slap, but I understood they were meant to protect me. I will not say a word, I said again. I know. His grip on my waist grew a little tighter. Because you are smart, Elena. You are smarter than you appear in that sweet pink dress. A spark of defiance lit inside my chest. It might have been the champagne. It might have been the fear still pumping through me. Or maybe it was the way he looked at me, as if I were both breakable and a threat. The song finished, but he did not release me right away. Thank you for the dance, I said, trying to step back. His eyes grew darker. Be careful, Piccola. This world is not a gentle place for innocent things. Before my mind could catch up, before I could think, I stood on my toes and kissed him. It was fast, hardly a real kiss, just the softest touch of my lips to his. It came from a wild place inside me that I did not recognize. I pulled away instantly, my cheeks hot with shame for what I had done. His face was a mask of surprise, completely unreadable. Then he bent down, his lips so close to my ear I could feel his breath. He whispered in a voice that was both a shield and a sword. You have no idea what you just began, Piccola. Then he was gone. He left me in the middle of the dance floor, trembling with a fear that had changed me completely. I did not sleep that night. Every time my eyes closed, I saw his face. I saw that cold, assessing gaze and the gun against another man's head. I heard the way he said my name, making it sound like a warning. And that kiss. God, what was I thinking? I covered my face with my hands, groaning into the dark of my small apartment. I had kissed a mafia boss, a man who erased people from existence, a man who told me to stay away from him, and I had responded by acting like a fool. The memory of his mouth, firm, warm, and shocked, made my stomach churn. You have no idea what you just began, Piccola. His words haunted me, and I could not tell if they were a promise or a threat. Monday morning arrived far too quickly. I forced myself to go to work at the little art gallery, hoping my usual routine would help me forget. I desperately needed things to be normal again. I needed to feel safe. But normal was a memory now. I was in the back room organizing prints when my boss, Margaret, called to me. "Elena, someone is here to see you." I frowned in confusion. "Me? Are you certain?" She nodded, looking just as confused. "He asked for you specifically." A very well-dressed man. My heart stopped beating. I walked to the front of the gallery on legs that felt like they might give out. And he was there. Dante Moretti was standing in the middle of the room. He was a creature of darkness, surrounded by light watercolors and peaceful landscapes. He wore a charcoal suit that was probably worth more than my car, with his hands casually in his pockets. When he saw me, a flicker of something crossed his face. "Elena," he said, his voice smooth, "I am here to buy some art." Margaret was almost buzzing with excitement. We did not get many clients who looked like they had endless money. "Of course," she said happily. "Elena will be happy to help you. She has excellent taste." Then she went back to her office, leaving the two of us alone. I walked toward him slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears. "What are you doing here? I am buying art, just as I said." His voice was calm, but his eyes held me in place with a force that made me feel weak. "Why?" "Because we have to talk." He looked around the small gallery. "I would prefer somewhere more private, but this will have to work." "I did not tell anyone," I whispered, my voice urgent. "I kept my promise to you." "I know." He moved a step closer, and I smelled it again. Cologne and danger. "That is not the reason I am here." "Then why are you here?" His jaw was tight. "You should not have kissed me, Elena." My face grew hot. "I know. I am so sorry. I have no idea why I did that. I just—" "It was seen," he cut me off softly, "by people who now believe you are important to me." The words felt like a splash of icy water. "But I am not. You told me I was nothing. That is why you danced with me, correct?" A dark look passed over his eyes. I lied. Before I could make sense of it, he leaned in. "There are people who will try to hurt you just to get to me. Do you understand that?" A cold dread filled my chest. "So what am I supposed to do?" His voice was firm. "You stay near me, until I convince them that you mean nothing." "But wouldn't being seen with you make things worse?" "Piccola, it's already too late," he said, the name sounding like an intimate secret that made my heart skip. "The second you kissed me where others could see, you were pulled into this." The room felt smaller. "I never asked for any of this." His expression relaxed slightly. "I know, but that doesn't change what is real." "So what is the plan now?" He took out his phone, typed, and then showed me the screen. A phone number glowed there. "Save this. If anyone you do not know comes near you, you call me right away." My hands were shaking as I took my own phone and keyed in the number. "I just do not get it," I whispered. "Why does it matter to you if I get hurt?" He was silent for a long time. Then he reached out, his fingers gently moving a lock of hair from my face. The touch was so tender it took my breath away. "Because innocent people should not be broken," he said softly, "especially not because of me." Before I could find my voice, a bell chimed over the gallery door. An older couple came inside, and Dante instantly pulled back. His face became a cold, professional mask. "I will buy that one," he said, gesturing to a random landscape painting. "That will be $4,000, I stammered. He produced a credit card without a second thought. "Fine." After he was gone, I stood alone in the quiet gallery, just looking at the business card he had slipped into the bag with the painting. Dante Moretti, Private Investments. It had no other details, only his name and a number. I knew I should throw it out, block him, and pretend none of this happened. Instead, the card went into my pocket. That evening, as I was locking the gallery, I saw it. A black, expensive car was parked across the street, its engine on. My stomach sank. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number Dante gave me. He picked up on the first ring. "What is it?" "There is a car," I whispered. "Across from the gallery. It has been there for 10 minutes. Go back inside. Lock the door. I am 5 minutes from you. Do not leave." The call ended. My hands shook so much that I nearly dropped my keys. I finally managed to unlock the door, rush inside, and lock it again, moving away from the large glass windows. The car outside did not move. 4 minutes later, a second car arrived, this one sleek and black, driving with an undeniable sense of purpose. Dante got out, and I could see the rigid tension in his posture from inside. He crossed the street and went to the waiting car. Its window lowered. Voices were exchanged. I could not make out the words, but I saw in Dante's stance a quiet fury, barely held in check. Then he turned and walked to the gallery. I unlocked the door for him with unsteady hands. "Who was that?" I asked when he was inside. "Someone you no longer have to worry about." His eyes swept over me, looking for any sign of injury. "Are you okay?" I nodded, but it was a complete lie. I was not okay. I was absolutely terrified. "Come," he said gently. "I am taking you home. I have my own car." "I will have someone get it tomorrow," he said, his tone leaving no room for debate. "You are not going to drive alone tonight." His car was just as luxurious as I expected, all soft leather and quiet strength. We drove in silence as I gave him directions to my apartment building in a voice that was barely audible. When we stopped outside, he turned toward me. "You are safe," he said. "I have made sure of that." "For how long?" I whispered. His jaw clenched. "For as long as I need to." I should have left then. I should have thanked him, run inside, and bolted every lock. Instead, I had to ask, "Why are you doing all of this?" He looked at me for a long moment, his dark eyes holding an expression I could not decipher. "Because you kissed me, Piccola," he said quietly. "And in my world, that is a promise." Then he reached over and opened my door for me. It was a clear dismissal. I got out on weak legs and walked toward my building, refusing to look back. But I could feel his gaze on me until I was safely inside. 3 days went by without a word from Dante. I should have felt relief. Instead, I was constantly checking my phone, startling whenever the gallery door opened, and scanning the street for dark cars. Clara called me 2 times to ask about the wedding, and I lied to her on both calls. Everything was perfect. Nothing strange had happened. Yes, I danced with Dante Moretti, but it was nothing more than that. She did not need to know the truth. On Thursday night, while I was closing the gallery, my phone vibrated, an unknown number. Dinner at 8 o'clock. An address was attached. My heart began to pound. I knew who it was. I typed back, "Why?" The answer was instant, from Dante. "Because we have to be seen in public, and because I want to." That last part made me hold my breath. Me. "Is this mandatory?" Dante. "Yes, wear something beautiful." I stood before my closet feeling utterly lost. My clothes were mostly for work or relaxing at home. I owned nothing suitable for the kind of place Dante Moretti would go for dinner. I finally chose a simple black dress I bought for a gallery event the year before. It was conservative, with long sleeves and a high neckline, and the hem fell just above my knees. It felt safe. At 7:45, someone knocked on my door. It was not Dante, but a polite, professional driver who took me to the same black car. The restaurant was the type I had only read about in magazines. The lighting was low and intimate, tables were set far from each other for privacy, and the waiters moved with silent grace. The hostess led me to a secluded corner where he was waiting. Dante rose as I came near, and that simple act of courtesy made my stomach flutter. He was in a dark blue suit without a tie, his top shirt button undone. He looked absolutely stunning. Elena. He pulled my chair out for me, and I sat down, feeling like a child playing dress-up in a life that was not mine. This place is gorgeous, I said, avoiding his eyes. I knew you would think so. He took the seat opposite me as a server instantly brought wine. When the waiter was gone, a heavy quiet fell over the table. I ran a finger along the stem of my glass, trying to find something to say. We needed to be seen in public, I managed at last. Who is watching us? Someone always is. His tone was simple fact. It is the way this world operates. And what are they meant to believe when they see us? His gaze locked with mine, and a warmth crept into my face. That you are under my protection, he stated. That to harm you would be a grave error. By sitting here, wearing that dress, looking at me as if you are deciding whether to flee. A small smile appeared on his face. Trust me, little one, the message is being received. I drank some wine, hoping to conceal my rattled nerves. I still do not get why you are helping me. The question came out soft, almost risky. I thought I understood, but I had to hear it from him. You hardly know who I am, I whispered. I know what is necessary. He leaned back in his chair, observing me. I know you work in that gallery for wages that barely pay for your apartment. I know your car fails, and you have to take the bus. I know you possess a degree in art history that you cannot use in this terrible job market. My eyes widened in shock. You had me investigated. Of course. There was no apology in his voice. I had to know what kind of person you were. And what was your conclusion? That you do not belong in a world like mine. His face softened just a little. That you are a good person. The word hung in the air between us. I am not that good, I replied, my mind flashing to our kiss, to that reckless decision. That caused all of this. If you were, you would not have kissed me, he finished for me, a trace of humor in his voice. That was the most honest thing a person has done around me in a very long time. Honest? I almost laughed. It was foolish. Perhaps, he said, taking a drink of his wine. But it was authentic. And in a room where everyone wore a mask, that was important. Our food was served, and we ate in a strange, tense quiet. I was aware of his every movement. Each time his gaze lingered on me, my skin grew warm. Tell me something real, he said suddenly. I blinked at him. What? Something true about yourself, not a fact I already paid to learn. I paused for a moment, then said quietly, I am scared. Scared of all this, of not knowing the rules, of making another mistake that will drag me deeper into a world I cannot escape. He was silent for a long time. Then he reached his hand across the table, and his fingers brushed against mine. You have a right to be scared, he said softly. But not of me. You never have to be scared of me. The contact was brief, but it sent a spark through me. Your turn, I whispered. Tell me something true. His jaw tightened. I have not been able to get you out of my head since the wedding. My breath caught in my throat. Dante. I tried, he said, his voice low and a little rough. I tried to tell myself you were just a complication, a new problem that needed to be handled. But then I saw you in that gallery, and you looked at me like I was some kind of monster, and all I wanted was to show you I could be something different. What different thing could you be? The question was softer than I meant it to be. I do not know. He pulled his hand away, and I instantly felt the loss of its warmth. That is the entire problem. After dinner, he drove me home himself. The car felt much smaller, more personal, with only the two of us inside. Darkness. I said thank you as he stopped in front of my apartment. For dinner, for all of it. He told me not to thank him yet. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. This is not over. I asked when it would be. When I know you are safe. He turned, and the power in his eyes took my breath away. Or when you ask me to stop. And if I do not? The question escaped me. A dangerous light flickered in his gaze. Then we will both discover what comes next. I should have said goodnight. I should have left the car and walked away from the man who had already shattered my world. Instead, I heard my own voice ask, "Do you want to come up?" His expression changed. Surprise and desire and control fought on his face. "Elena, my name was a warning. You do not understand what you are asking." I admitted that maybe I did not. "But I am asking anyway." He watched me for a long moment. Then he slowly shook his head. "Not tonight, Piccola." Relief and disappointment washed over me at the same time. "Why not?" "Because when I come to your apartment," he said softly, "it will not be because you are lost and afraid and need something to hold. It will be because you know exactly what you want, and you are ready for it." My face grew hot. "That is not—" "Yes, it is." He reached out, his fingers tracing my jaw with a softness that undid me. "And there is nothing wrong with that. But I will not take advantage." "What if I want you to?" The whisper came out before I could stop it. His eyes went dark, and for a second I saw his control break. "Do not say things like that if you do not mean them," he said, his voice rough. "I do mean them," I breathed. He moved closer and my heart beat so hard, I was certain he could hear it. His lips brushed my ear, sending a chill down my spine. "Then prove it," he whispered. "Choose to see me again when you are not frightened, when you are thinking with a clear head, when you understand that getting closer to me is a step into the shadows." He pulled away, and I just sat there, shaking, my body aching with want and confusion. "Good night, Elena." I got out of the car on weak legs and walked toward my building. This time I did look back. He was still there watching me, making sure I was safely inside. And I knew with a sudden clarity that I was no longer running from Dante Moretti. I was falling straight toward him. The flowers came to the gallery the next morning. They were not roses, which would have been too easy. They were white peonies, elegant and quiet in a simple crystal vase. The card just said, D. Margaret nearly fainted. "A secret admirer," I murmured, something like that, as I touched a soft petal. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Dante. "Do you like them?" I typed back. "They are beautiful. You did not have to do that." He replied, "Lunch today." I paused, my finger hovering over the screen. His words from last night echoed in my head. "Choose to see me again when you are not scared." Was I scared? Yes. But I also felt pulled toward him, a force as strong and as certain as gravity. I wrote back, "Where?" His answer came instantly. "I will pick you up at noon." He was there exactly on time. Today he was dressed down in dark jeans, a black shirt, and a leather jacket. He looked both dangerous and beautiful. Every woman in the gallery followed him with their eyes. "Ready?" he asked, his focus only on me. I grabbed my coat and followed him out to a different car. This one was still expensive, but less obvious. A dark blue sedan instead of the black town car. "Where are we going?" I asked as he merged into traffic. "Somewhere we can talk without anyone listening." That sentence should have made me nervous. Instead, excitement twisted in my stomach. We drove out of the city and into the hills, where the houses became mansions surrounded by acres of privacy. He finally turned down a long driveway lined with olive trees. At the end sat a stunning modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows, all sharp lines and calm grace. "Is this yours?" I asked when he parked. "It is one of my properties. I come here when I need to think." He led me inside, and I was surprised by how different it was from what I expected. There was no dark leather or heavy furniture. Instead, there was light, flooding in from the huge windows. The simple decor was mostly white and gray, with warmth from the wooden floors and the art on the walls. "It is beautiful," I said, and I meant it. "I am glad you like it." He walked to the open kitchen. "Are you hungry? You cook?" A small smile touched his lips. "Do not look so shocked. I am very capable." I watched, captivated, as he took ingredients from the refrigerator. Fresh pasta, tomatoes, basil, garlic. He moved with a practiced confidence. "Where did you learn to cook?" I asked from a bar stool. "My grandmother." His expression softened. "She insisted that every man should know how to feed himself well." "Tell me about her." He stopped, his knife held over a tomato. "Why?" "Because I want to know you. The real you. Not just the man that everyone fears." He was quiet for a long time. Then he started chopping again. "She raised me after my parents died. She taught me everything important: loyalty, respect, and the line between power and cruelty." "Did she know about—" I stopped, unsure how to ask. "My work?" He nodded. "She knew. She did not approve of everything, but she understood. In our world, you do not get to choose what you inherit. Do you ever wish you could?" His eyes found mine, and I saw something raw in them. Every single day. That confession hung between us. We ate on the terrace that looked out over the valley. The pasta was simple and perfect. Talking was easier than I thought it would be. We talked about art, about books, about the little things that make up a life. He asked about my family, and I told him about my parents, who were both gone now, about growing up with little money and dreaming of galleries in New York. "Why did you not go?" he asked. "To New York." I shrugged. Money, timing, fear, all the usual reasons that dreams stay as dreams. "What if I could make that happen for you?" I looked at him quickly. "What?" "I have contacts, galleries, collectors. I could open doors for you." "No." The word was sharper than I intended. "I do not want that." His brow creased. "Why not?" "Because I need to know that what I achieve is mine, not because of who I know or who I am with." I hesitated. "Who you are with?" His voice was low and dangerous. "I do not even know what we are," I admitted. He put down his fork and gave me his full attention. "What do you want us to be?" The question stole my breath. "I do not know if I have a choice." "You always have a choice, Elena." "Do I?" I held his gaze. "You said I was already in this world because I kissed you, that I needed your protection. That does not feel like a choice." "You are right." He stood and walked to the edge of the terrace with his back to me. "You are a part of this now, whether you like it or not. But what comes next is your decision." I went to the railing beside him, the valley spreading out below us. "What are my choices?" "I can protect you from a distance. I can make sure no one hurts you, but we stay separate. You return to your life, and I will stay in mine." His jaw was tight. "Or, you let me in. You accept that this thing between us is real, and we discover what it means together. And if I choose the second option?" He turned to me, and the fire in his eyes made my legs weak. "Then you must accept all of me. Not just the man who cooked you pasta. You accept the man who runs an empire built on fear and blood. The man who makes choices that will keep you awake at night. The man who will use violence to protect you if he has to." "You are trying to scare me away," I whispered. "I am trying to be honest." He reached for me, his fingers tracing my cheek. "Because once you are truly mine, Piccola, I will never let you go." Those words should have sent me running. Instead, they lit a fire deep inside me. "I am not running," I said softly. "You should be." "Maybe." I moved closer, pulled by that invisible string that tied us together. "But I am not." His control broke. I saw it in the way his hand tightened in my hair, in the sharp intake of his breath. "Elena." My name was both a warning and a plea. "Kiss me," I whispered. "If I start, I will not want to stop." "Then do not stop." For a second we were frozen. Then his mouth was on mine and my world disappeared. This was not like the quick, impulsive kiss at the wedding. This was slow and deliberate, and it shattered me. His lips moved on mine with a control that made me shake. One hand held my face while the other pulled my body against his. I melted against him, my hands clenching his shirt, and a soft sound escaped me. He broke away instantly, his breathing heavy. "We need to slow down." "I do not want to slow down," I breathed out. "Elena." He rested his forehead on mine. "You are killing me." "Good," I whispered, and my own boldness surprised me. He laughed, a rough, wonderful sound. Then he kissed me again, but this time it was softer, like he was learning the shape of my lips. When we finally separated, I was shaking. "Stay here tonight," he said softly. My heart pounded. "Dante." "In the guest room," he added quickly. "I just do not want you to go yet." The vulnerability in his voice, his admission cracked something deep inside my soul. "Okay," I managed to whisper. He led me to a guest room, a space as beautiful as the rest of his home, filled with soft whites and gentle grays, offering a panoramic view of the valley. He gave me a t-shirt to wear and promised he was just down the hall if I needed anything. But my mind refused to rest. I lay in that strange bed, thoughts racing in an uncontrollable spiral. Every moment, every kiss, every word he spoke played over and over. Just after midnight, I finally gave up. I tiptoed downstairs, wearing his shirt, my feet bare against the cool floor, searching for a glass of water. I found him standing on the terrace with a drink in his hand, his gaze lost in the dark expanse below. "You can't sleep either?" he asked, not even turning. "My head is too loud." I went to stand beside him at the railing. "You too." We shared a few moments of comfortable silence. "Do you have any regrets?" I finally asked. He shifted to look at me, and I could feel the intensity in his eyes, even in the shadows. "No," he answered, his voice rough. "My only regret is that I cannot do it all over again right this second." "What is stopping you?" "The fact that you are standing there in my shirt, looking at me that way. I am barely maintaining my self-control as it is." A wave of heat rushed through me at his words. "Maybe I do not want you to have control," I whispered back. His gaze darkened. "Do not start something you are not prepared to see through to the end, Piccola." I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "What makes you think I am not ready? You are not." But his voice was tight with effort. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I can see you trembling." He was right. I was shaking, but it was not from fear. "Dante." I breathed his name. "Go back to your room, Elena." His voice was harsh with restraint. "Before I forget all the reasons I am trying to be a gentleman." I wanted to fight him, to tell him to stop treating me like I was made of glass. But I could see the rigid tension in his frame, the way his knuckles were white from gripping the railing. So I returned to the house, my body throbbing with an unfulfilled ache. But the dynamic between us had changed tonight. There was no turning back. I woke to bright sunlight pouring through massive windows and the rich aroma of coffee. For a split second, I had no idea where I was. Then the memories came rushing back. The house, the intense kiss, Dante's strained voice telling me to leave before he lost his composure. My cheeks flushed with heat. I saw that my dress from the night before was cleaned, pressed, and laid out on a chair. The sheer efficiency of it made me smile. It was just like Dante Moretti to have a staff that worked like ghosts in the night. When I went downstairs, he was in the kitchen, 2 mugs of coffee already waiting. He was dressed in gray sweatpants and a simple white t-shirt, his hair slightly messy. He looked so unlike the perfectly controlled man in tailored suits that I paused in the doorway. "Good morning," he said, offering me a cup. "Morning." I accepted it with gratitude, my hands warming around the mug. "Thank you for all of this. I can take you back to the city soon. My afternoon is full of meetings." A flicker of something crossed his face. "But I wanted to ask you something before we go." "Okay." He took a moment, searching for the right words. "There is an event tomorrow night, a charity gala. I have to be there, and I would like you to be my companion." My stomach did a nervous flip. "As your date?" "As someone I am protecting who must be seen with me," he clarified, then paused. "But yes, as my date. Is that not going to make everything more complicated?" It is already complicated. He stepped toward me, and I could smell the faint, intimate scent of his cologne. But you were correct last night. We have to define what is happening between us, and that means we cannot hide. I have nothing appropriate for a gala, I said, my voice weak. I will handle that. Let me take care of this, Elena. His tone was gentle but left no room for argument. Please. I knew I should have refused, should have held on to my independence, but I wanted to go. I wanted everyone to see me on his arm. I wanted to dive deeper into his world. Okay, I whispered. A warm light sparked in his eyes. Okay. A courier delivered the dress to my apartment that afternoon. It was a stunning emerald green gown that seemed to dance with the light. It was elegant, sophisticated, and fit me as if it were custom made. The perfect fit should have been a surprise, but it was not. Of course, he knew my size. Clara called me right as I was admiring it. Okay, what in the world is going on? She asked without preamble. I saw pictures of you with Dante Moretti at Lucas. Elena, a single meal at that restaurant costs more than your weekly salary. It was only dinner, I replied, which was not exactly a lie. Just dinner with a powerful crime boss. Are you listening to yourself? He is not. I trailed off, because he was. Lying to my best friend suddenly felt deeply wrong. Clara, I cannot get into it right now, but I am fine. I swear. Are you safe? Yes. You are certain? Because if he is making you do anything, he is not, I cut in, my voice firm. I promise you, this is a complex situation, but it is my decision. She was silent for a long, tense moment. You are developing feelings for him. It was a statement, not a question. I do not know, I whispered, which was another lie. The gala took place in a historic downtown hotel, a grand space of marble pillars and glittering chandeliers. I felt like I had traveled back in time. As Dante guided me inside, his hand rested possessively on the small of my back. Every single person in the room watched us walk in. They are all staring, I murmured. Let them stare, he said calmly. You are beautiful tonight. His compliment warmed me, though a knot of anxiety tightened in my gut. These were not average people. I saw faces from the news, politicians, CEOs, people with the kind of influence that could build or break cities. And I knew that among them were men like Dante, men who ruled empires from the shadows. He introduced me to one person after another. I smiled, I shook hands, and I tried my best to remember names. Most were polite, their curiosity masked by years of practice. But I could feel their minds working, calculating. They were all asking the same questions without speaking. Who was I? What was my purpose here? What was my connection to Dante Moretti? I wished I knew the answers myself. About 2 hours into the evening, Dante was drawn into a conversation with a group of older, well-dressed men. Their posture was rigid, their voices were low and serious. Stay right here, he murmured to me. I will be back in a moment. As he walked off, I was left by myself near the bar, feeling completely exposed. So, you are the one. I turned and saw a woman observing me. She was gorgeous and impeccably dressed, but her eyes were cold. I am sorry, I said. The girl who finally captured Dante's interest. Her smile was a beautiful, empty thing. My name is Isabella. I am an old friend of his. The way she emphasized the word friend told me she meant much more. Elena, I replied softly. I know who you are. She moved in closer, lowering her voice. Let me offer you a piece of advice, Elena. Men like Dante do not have relationships. They have acquisitions. And once they lose interest, they get rid of them. Her words were like tiny needles, and I fought to keep my composure. I do not believe that is any of your concern, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Perhaps not. She took a delicate sip of her champagne. But do not claim I never warned you. This world will chew up and spit out little girls like you. She turned and walked away, leaving me shaken. Do not pay any attention to her. I flinched. Dante was suddenly at my side, his face a thundercloud. How much of that did you hear? I asked. I heard enough. His jaw was clenched. Isabella is bitter because I broke things off with her 2 years ago. Her words mean nothing. Is it the truth? I whispered. That you acquire possessions and then discard them? He turned his body completely toward me, his eyes burning with intensity. You are not a possession, Elena, and I have no intention of ever discarding you. Then what am I to you? I am still trying to figure that out. His hand found mine, and he laced his fingers through mine. But you are not insignificant. You are not temporary. And you are absolutely nothing like anyone who has come before you. His words released a tight band of pressure around my heart. Dance with me, he said softly. He led me to the dance floor. This time, as he pulled me into his arms, I did not pull back. I let myself melt against him, resting my head on his chest and listening to the strong, steady rhythm of his heart. I am sorry, he murmured into my hair, for her, for all of this. It is not your fault, is it not? His arms held me tighter. I pulled you into this life knowing how difficult it would be, knowing how you would be judged. I made my own choice, I said, my voice quiet. I am still choosing it. He leaned back just enough to meet my eyes, and the raw vulnerability there stole my breath. Why? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Why choose this life? Why choose me? Because for the first time in a very long time, you make me feel like I am doing more than just surviving. The honest words tumbled out before I could stop them. Because with you, I feel completely awake, totally alive even when I am terrified. He raised his hand to my face, his thumb gently stroking my cheek. You completely destroy me, Piccola. Every defense I have ever built, you walk right through it like it is nothing. Is that a bad thing? I have no idea yet. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. But I do know that I never want it to stop. The music swelled, and we moved as one in the middle of the crowded room, lost in our own private universe. Take me home, I whispered. You are my home. He drew in a sharp breath. Elena. I am not afraid anymore, I cut him off. Or maybe I am, but it does not matter. I am tired of waiting, Dante. I am tired of being careful. His eyes blazed with a mix of heat and restraint. Are you certain? I have never been more certain about anything in my entire life. For a heart-stopping moment, we were perfectly still. Then he took my hand. He took my hand, his grip solid, and guided me away from the crowd. Come on, he said gruffly. I walked with him into the darkness, my pulse frantic with a mixture of desire and the frightening knowledge that I was about to make an irreversible choice. The drive to his home in the hills seemed to last forever. Dante was silent, his jaw clenched. He kept one hand on the steering wheel while the other rested near me. The air between us crackled with unspoken energy. I held my hands tightly in my lap, certain he could hear the wild beating of my heart. You can still change your mind, he stated calmly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. I will take you home. No explanations needed. I am not changing my mind. His grip on the wheel tightened. Elena, I want this. I cut him off, my voice more stable than I felt. I want you. The words settled in the space between us. When we reached his driveway, he killed the engine but did not move to get out. He turned toward me, his face serious. If we go through with this, he said softly, everything will be different. I know. I will not be able to let you go. Do you understand what that means? The sheer force in his tone sent a chill down my spine. Yes, then let us go inside. The house was still and dark. He led me through the main hall, past a large room with windows that stretched from the floor to the ceiling. The valley below was covered in shadows. My shoes clicked against the wood floor, the sound loud in the quiet. He stopped at the base of the stairs and faced me. This is your last chance, he whispered. I did not answer with words. I reached up and pressed my lips to his. His self-control broke. He crushed me to him, his mouth taking mine with a hunger that left me breathless. I gasped, and he used the chance to deepen the kiss. One of his hands tangled in my hair. The other pressed into the small of my back, anchoring me to him. I leaned into his body, my hands balling the fabric of his shirt. He lifted me with no effort at all. My legs wrapped around his waist automatically as he carried me upstairs. He never broke our kiss. He pushed a door open with his foot. We were suddenly in his bedroom. It was a space of dark wood and clean angles, with a large bed in the center. He set me on my feet gently. We just stood there for a moment, breathing heavily and looking at each other. "I have dreamed of this," he said, his voice rough. His hands cupped my face. "Since that first kiss at the wedding, I have imagined you here, in my home, in my bed. Then why do we still have clothes on?" The question surprised even me, and I saw a new fire ignite in his eyes. "Because I want this to be perfect." His thumbs gently stroked my cheekbones. His touch felt almost sacred. "I want to savor every moment with you. I want to learn every sound you make and every spot that makes you tremble." I kissed him again, silencing his words. I felt him smile into the kiss. "You are impatient, Piccola. I am terrified you will change your mind," I confessed, my words coming out in a rush. "Never." He turned me around slowly. I felt his fingers find the zipper on my dress. "I am going to make certain you know exactly who you belong to." The zipper moved down, and the cool air felt electric on my spine. His lips traced the same path, and a shiver ran through me. "So responsive," he whispered against my shoulder. "So perfect." The dress fell around my feet. I stood before him in only my underclothes, feeling more exposed than ever before. He turned me to face him again. The look in his eyes was a mix of hunger, softness, and possession that made my legs feel weak. "You are beautiful," he stated plainly. Before I could say anything, he lifted me once more and placed me on the bed. He stood above me for a second, just watching. I fought the instinct to cover myself. "Do not hide from me," he said with a quiet intensity. "Never hide from me." Then he was on the bed with me. His weight, his heat, and his presence were an assault on my senses. He found my mouth again, but this time the kiss was softer and more thoughtful. His hands began to explore my body, moving over my arms and my waist with slow, careful focus. "Tell me if I do anything you dislike," he whispered against my lips. I could only manage a nod, already overwhelmed by the feeling. Time lost all meaning. His shirt came off, and then his trousers. The sensation of his skin on mine made me draw a sharp breath. He kissed my neck, my collarbone, and the dip of my throat, taking his time and slowly driving me mad with desire. "Dante," I gasped, not even sure what I was asking for. "I know, Piccola. I know." His hand moved lower, and I arched my back to meet his touch. A small sound escaped me. "That is it," he encouraged. "Let me hear you." My entire world shrank to pure sensation. His mouth, his hands, and his body above me. I was shaking, caught somewhere between intense need and a deep uncertainty. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, pulling back just enough to see my face. "Yes," I whispered. "It is just that I have never." The understanding showed in his eyes. "Elena, are you?" I nodded, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. He was silent for a long moment. His expression shifted from surprise to tenderness, and then to something much darker. "Why did you not tell me?" he asked, his voice soft. "Because I did not want you to stop. I should stop." But his hand remained on my waist, his thumb drawing tiny circles that made me tremble. "Please do not," I whispered. "This is supposed to be special." "Planned, not. It is special." I reached up and touched the side of his face. "Because it is with you." His restraint began to crack. I saw it in the way his gaze intensified, in the rigid set of his shoulders. "I will be slow," he promised, his voice strained. "If it hurts, or if you want to stop, You have to tell me right away. Okay. He kissed me again, much deeper this time. I let myself get lost in it. His hands moved everywhere with a touch that was both gentle and confident. And when we finally moved together, when we finally joined, I gasped at the sudden, sharp feeling. He stopped moving instantly. Elena, do not stop, I managed to say. Please do not stop. He began to move again, slowly and with great care, his eyes locked on mine. The initial discomfort melted away, replaced by something else. A sense of fullness, of connection, an intimacy so overwhelming it brought tears to my eyes. You are crying, he said, and I could see the worry on his face. It is okay, I whispered. It is much more than okay. He gently kissed my tears away as his movements became more assured. I held on to him, flooded by the sensation, the emotion, and the pure intensity of being so close to another human being. Look at me, he commanded softly. I obeyed. The look in his eyes, a mixture of possession, tenderness, and raw hunger, completely undid me. Mine, he breathed. You are mine, Elena. In that instant, I knew it was the truth. Later, we were a tangle of limbs. My head rested on his chest while his arms held me close. The steady beat of his heart under my ear grounded me. Are you all right? He asked in a low voice, his hand stroking my hair. Yes. Are you certain? I did not hurt you. Only for a moment at the start. My words trailed off as I felt my face grow warm. And after that? A hint of a smile was in his voice. After that, it was perfect. His arms drew me in tighter. You are remarkable. Do you know that? Why? Because you just gave me something beyond precious. And now you lie here asking if I am all right. I tilted my head to look at his face. Are you okay? I mean it. His expression was a complex map of satisfaction, ownership, and something softer. I have never been better. I snuggled closer, feeling safe, warm, and utterly content. What comes next? I asked quietly. Now you sleep. Tomorrow we will sort out the rest. Promise you will be here when I wake up, Elena. He guided my face up toward his. I am not going anywhere, and neither are you. Not ever again. The words should have felt possessive, even controlling. Instead, they sounded like a vow. I closed my eyes and let exhaustion claim me, secure in his embrace. For the first time since that night at the wedding, I thought that maybe choosing Dante Moretti was not the most dangerous decision I had ever made. It was the most right. I awoke to the morning light and the aroma of coffee, but this time, when I stretched, a pleasant soreness reminded me of everything that happened. Dante stood by the window in only his sleep pants, gazing out at the valley. He heard me move and turned around. The smile that spread across his face was sincere and warm. Good morning, he said. Morning. I sat up, pulling the sheet up to my chest. You are up early. I could not sleep. He walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. I was too busy watching you. That is not unsettling at all, I joked, and he chuckled. Maybe just a little. He reached over and brushed a piece of hair from my face. How do you feel? Happy, I confessed. A little sore, but definitely happy. His expression grew soft. I am glad. And you? Terrified, he admitted with surprising honesty. I stared at him. Why? Because now that I have you, the idea of anything bad happening to you. He shook his head. I cannot bear it. I reached for his hand. Nothing is going to happen to me. You cannot know that. Then you will protect me, just like you promised. He lifted my hand to his mouth and kissed my knuckles. With my life, Piccola. With my very life. As I looked into his eyes, I believed every word. But neither one of us realized that the true danger had only just begun. The next week was a haze of secret moments and careful joy. I went to my job at the gallery. Dante managed his affairs. But each evening, he would pick me up, and we would eat dinner together, sometimes out, sometimes at his home. We spoke about everything and nothing as we got to know one another, our own rhythm, crafting something that felt solid and real. Clara no longer asked questions, but I saw the worry in her eyes each time she looked my way. Margaret at the gallery was just happy that I seemed more confident, more alive. I was navigating two different lives. In one, I sold art and paid my bills. In the other, I fell asleep in the arms of a man who commanded an empire built on fear. The two worlds were bound to collide. It happened on a Thursday night. I was locking up the gallery when my phone buzzed. The text was from Dante. "Do not leave the gallery. I am sending Marco to get you." My stomach clenched. I typed back, "What is wrong, Dante?" He answered, "Just stay inside. Lock the doors. I will explain when you are safe." My hands shook as I secured the front door. I killed most of the lights, leaving only the faint glow from the security system. 15 minutes later, a black SUV stopped at the curb. A man I knew as one of Dante's guards, Marco, stepped out. He was tall and serious as he walked to the door. I let him in, my heart pounding against my ribs. "Miss Elena," he said with a polite nod. "We have to go now." "What is happening?" "There was an incident. Dante needs you somewhere secure." He guided me to the vehicle, and I got inside, feeling completely numb. Another guard was behind the wheel, and we drove away from the gallery at a high speed. "Where are you taking me?" I asked. "We are going to Dante's downtown office. He is waiting for you there." The drive lasted 20 minutes, taking us through parts of the city I had never seen before. We entered an underground parking garage below a modern high-rise, and Marco walked me to a private elevator. When the doors slid open, I stepped into a room that radiated power. It was all dark wood and leather, with huge windows that overlooked the city lights. Dante was there, standing near the windows with his phone pressed to his ear. When he spotted me, relief washed over his features. "I will call you back," he said into the phone before crossing the room in 3 long steps. "Are you okay?" "I am fine. What is going on?" His jaw clenched. "There was an attack. One of my shipments was hit. 3 of my men are dead." A wave of horror crashed over me. Oh my God. It was the Rossi family. They are trying to provoke a war. His hand gently cupped my cheek. "And they sent a clear message that anyone close to me is a target." "So I am bait," I whispered. "No." The word was sharp and fierce. "You are protected. That is why I brought you here. Nobody can get to you in this building." "For how long?" "Until I resolve this." I stepped back, studying his face, truly seeing him. Something in his eyes was different tonight, colder and more dangerous. "What are you going to do?" asked softly. "What is necessary? I am going to send a message." His voice was empty of emotion. "One that will make it perfectly clear what happens when someone threatens what belongs to me." That possessiveness should have scared me. Instead, a strange feeling of safety settled over me. "Will it be dangerous?" I asked. "Yes. Will you be safe?" A hint of softness returned to his eyes. "Is that what you are worried about? Me?" "Of course I am." He pulled me into a tight embrace, his arms encircling me. "I have been doing this for a very long time, Piccolina. I know how to deal with threats. That does not mean I cannot worry." He kissed the top of my head. "Stay here tonight. I have a room prepared with everything you will need. I will be back before sunrise. I want to wait for you." "Elena, please." I looked up at him. "I will not be able to sleep anyway." He considered my face for a long moment before nodding. "Fine, but you stay inside this office. Do not go near the windows, and Marco will be right outside the door." "Okay." He kissed me then, hard and desperate, as if he were trying to commit the taste of me to memory. "I will come back," he promised against my lips. "You better." He walked out, and I was left alone in the silent office. I tried to keep myself busy by looking at the books on his shelves and the art on his walls. Everything was tasteful and expensive, revealing nothing personal about him, except for a single photograph on his desk. I picked it up. It was a picture of a younger Dante, maybe in his early 20s, standing beside an older woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. His grandmother, I guessed, the one who taught him how to cook. He looked different in the photo, less guarded and softer, before the burden of his world had settled onto his shoulders. The hours crawled by. I tried to sleep on the leather sofa, but I could not. Every little sound made me jump. Every minute that passed felt like an eternity. The door finally opened around 3 in the morning. Dante came in, and my relief lasted only 2 seconds before I saw the blood. Oh my God! I was on my feet in an instant. Are you hurt? It is not mine, he said flatly, already heading toward the private bathroom. I followed him. He twisted the faucet on and started to wash his hands, and I stared as the water turned red. I told you what I am, Elena. His voice was cold and far away. This is what I do. This is the world I live in. I know. He looked at me sharply. Do you? Because seeing it on my hands is not the same as knowing it in your head. I am not running, I said softly. You should be. He dried his hands with rough motions. You should get as far away from me as you possibly can. Is that what you want? What I want is not important. It is important to me. I stepped closer, even as a part of my mind screamed at me to listen to him and flee. Tell me what happened. I sent the message that needed to be sent. His expression was like stone. The Rossi family now understands what happens when they target what is mine. Did someone die? Yes. The single word hung between us in the air. I should have been horrified. I should have seen him as a monster, but my only thought was that he had done it to protect me, to protect what we were creating together. Are you safe now? I asked. For now. Then come here. He stared at me as if I were speaking a language he did not understand. Elena, I have blood under my fingernails. Come here, I repeated with firmness. He walked toward me slowly, as if he thought I would shrink away from his touch. Instead, I wrapped my arms around his waist and held him tight. He was rigid for a moment. Then he seemed to crumble into me, his arms crushing me against his body. His face was buried in my hair. You should despise me, he said roughly. I do not. You should be scared of me. I am not. I pulled back to meet his eyes. I am scared for you. There is a difference. His gaze searched mine. How can you look at me that way, knowing what I have done? Because I also know your reasons for doing it. I gently touched his cheek. You are not a monster, Dante. You are just a man trying to shield the people you love. That does not make it right. Maybe it does not, but it makes it human. He kissed me then, a desperate and raw kiss, and I tasted his fear, his violence, and his vulnerability all at once. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead on mine. I do not deserve you, he whispered. Too bad. You are stuck with me now. A sound that was almost a laugh escaped him. Promise me one thing. Anything. If this life gets too dark, if you cannot bear it, promise you will tell me. Before you shatter. I looked into his eyes and saw true fear. It was not for his enemies, but for the possibility of losing me. I promise, I said quietly. He pulled me close once more. We stood together in the quiet office as the city began to wake with the dawn. I realized that to choose Dante was to choose all of him, the light and the shadow, the gentleness and the brutality. I had made my choice. Now, I had to accept the consequences. 2 days after the assault on Dante's men, the Rossi family retaliated. I was at the gallery handling a new shipment of prints when Margaret called me. Elena, there is a package for you. I walked to the front expecting flowers, as Dante sent them often, but instead I saw a small box wrapped in brown paper. It had no return address and no card. Who delivered? This? I asked Margaret. A courier service, she said with a shrug. Should I open it? No, I will take it. I carried the package into the back room, a sense of unease twisting in my gut. I took out my phone and sent a text to Dante. Did you send me a package? His answer came back instantly. No. What package? I replied. Something was just delivered to the gallery. He texted back, Do not open it. I am sending Marco. Wait for him. But my curiosity was too strong. I carefully tore away the paper to find a plain white box. Inside, there was a picture of me walking to my car the day before. I was alone, vulnerable, and on the back, someone had written in red ink, You are easier to touch than you think. My hands began to tremble. The bell on the gallery door chimed, and I looked up to see Marco walking in, his face grim. Miss Elena, we have to go now. They know where I work, I whispered, showing him the photograph. They were watching me. His jaw was set in a hard line. Come with me. Dante is waiting. We drove to the house in the hills, where I found Dante pacing like a trapped tiger. The instant he saw me, he crossed the room and pulled me into his arms. Let me see it, he said in a rough voice. I gave him the picture, and I watched his expression change from worry to a cold, hard fury. Rossi, he stated flatly. This is his method. Threats before the action. What are we going to do? You are going to do nothing. He placed the photo down on a table. You will stay here. I am putting guards on you 24/7. I cannot hide forever, Dante. You can until this is over. And how long will that be? As long as it takes. His voice was quiet and still. I will not risk you, Elena. I cannot. I saw the fear underneath his anger, the real terror he felt at the idea of something happening to me. Okay, I said softly. I will stay. Relief flooded his face. I need to see some people, to find a way to stop this before it becomes a full-scale war. Can you stay here alone? Yes. He gave me a hard, possessive kiss. Marco will be just outside the door. Do not leave this house. I will not. I promise. Then he was gone. I was left with only my thoughts and two armed men guarding the entrances. The hours crawled by. I attempted to read and watch a show, anything to stop thinking about that photograph and its meaning. They had been watching my every move, following me. They could have taken me at any time. The idea made my skin crawl. Just as the sun began to set, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I knew I should let it go, but a strange impulse made me pick it up. Hello, Elena. The voice was a man's, slick and unfamiliar. We have not had a formal introduction. I am Luca Rossi. The blood in my veins turned to ice. How do you have this number? I possess resources, just as your Dante does. He let out a small laugh. Did you enjoy my little present? What is it you want? I want you to deliver something to your man. Let him know that if he refuses to stand down, I will destroy everything he values. I will begin with you. He will kill you for this, I said, shocked at the certainty in my own voice. Perhaps, but not before I make you suffer. And I assure you, my dear, I will force him to watch. The call ended. I just sat there, shaking, the phone gripped tight in my hand. I needed to call Dante. I had to tell him about the threat, but I knew his reaction. It would be violent. It would make this war worse before I had a chance to think. I heard yelling from outside, followed by the crack of a gun. My body dropped to the floor on instinct, my heart pounding in my chest. More gunfire, fast and near. Somewhere inside the house, glass broke. Marco charged into the room. Miss Elena, we have to go right now. What is going on? They are here. We need to get you away from the house. He pulled me up and guided me to the rear of the house, Another burst of gunfire sounded, and I heard the shouts of men as violence erupted all around me. We reached the garage, where a second guard had a car running. "Get inside," Marco ordered. I threw myself into the back seat, and we sped out of the garage while more shots echoed behind us. "Are they behind us?" I asked, out of breath. Marco glanced in the mirror. "Not right now, but they will be soon." He was already on his phone. "Our position is compromised. I have Miss Elena with me. We are on our way to the safe house." I could not make out Dante's reply, but I could feel his rage. The safe house turned out to be a plain apartment in a part of town I did not know. Marco rushed me in, swept every room, and then took a position by the door. "How could they find us?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Somebody talked, or they put a tracker on your phone." His gaze was intense. "Dante is coming. He would be here in 15 minutes. That short time felt like an eternity. When the door was finally thrown open, Dante entered like a force of nature, radiating controlled violence. His eyes met mine, a battle of relief and fury in his expression. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "No, I am fine." He came to me quickly, his hands cupping my face as he searched for any injury himself. "What happened? Tell me everything." I recounted the phone call, Rossi's menacing words, and the assault on the house. His face grew colder with every detail I shared. "He called you himself," Dante stated, his voice flat. "He made threats directly to you." "Yes. And you did not tell me right away." "I was about to, but then you could have died, Elena." His voice grew louder. "Do you realize that? If Marco had not gotten you out?" "But he did," I cut in. "I am safe this time." He stepped back, pushing his hands through his hair in frustration. "This is exactly what I feared. You are in danger because of me. This is not your fault." "Yes, it is." He turned back, and the anguish in his eyes shattered my heart. "Anything that happens to you is because of me. Every threat, every second of fear, it is all because you are with me. And I would choose you again," I said without hesitation. "You do not mean that." "Yes, I do." I stepped toward him. "I am afraid, Dante. I will not lie about that. But I am not leaving you." "You should." "That is too bad, because I am not." He watched me for a long moment, a complex emotion shifting in his eyes. Then he pulled me into an embrace so tight I could hardly breathe. "I cannot lose you," he said, his voice raw. "I cannot. You will not. Promise me. I promise." He kissed me then, a desperate, claiming act, and I returned it with all the feeling I had. When we broke apart, his face had hardened into a dangerous mask. "This will be over tonight," he said softly. "What are you planning to do?" "What I should have done at the very start." He glanced at Marco. "Get everyone on the line, a full meeting in 1 hour." "Dante," I began to say, "I am finishing this war." He cut me off. "Permanently. One way or the other." He left me at the safe house with a team of 3 guards, promising to be back by sunrise. I tried to find sleep, but it would not come. Each noise made me flinch. Every minute that passed felt like torture. At around 4 in the morning, my phone went off. "Dante, it is done," were his first words. "What is done?" "Rossi is dead. His top men have accepted my terms for peace. The war is finished." A wave of both relief and horror washed over me. "Are you all right?" "I am alive. That is all that is important." "Please come back to me," I whispered. "I am on my way now." When he walked in 20 minutes later, I could see the weariness in his features, the burden of his actions. But I could also see his relief that I was unharmed. "It is finished," he said softly, gathering me into an embrace. "You are safe now." I held on to him tightly, and we just stood together in the silent apartment while the sun came up outside. The conflict was over, but I knew in my heart this was only the start of my journey to understand what it meant to love a man like Dante Moretti. After Rossi's death, Dante's entire world changed. The news traveled fast in the city's hidden circles. If you cross Dante Moretti, if you threaten what belongs to him, you will pay the ultimate price. The terms of peace he forced were harsh but clear. No one would dare to challenge his power for a long time. But that peace had its own price. I moved into his house in the hills for good. I stopped pretending to have my own life. The gallery granted me a leave of absence, understanding the unspoken need for me to step away. Clara's calls became rarer, and I felt her slipping away because of the path I had taken. My former life was becoming a distant memory, and Dante was not the same. He was more watchful, more possessive. He was always touching me, as if he needed physical proof that I was real and out of harm's way. At night, he held me so close that I would sometimes wake up struggling for air. "Talk to me," I pleaded one night as we sat on the patio watching the sunset. "Tell me what is on your mind." He remained silent for a while. "I took a man's life because he made a threat against you." "I know. Does that not disturb you? Should it?" I turned to face him. "You protected me. You protected us. I will not sit in judgment of you for that, even if it turns me into a monster." "You are not a monster." I reached for his hand. "You are a man forced to make terrible decisions in a terrible world. That is a kind way to see it. It is the truth." He drew me in, and I rested my head on his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart. "I have been thinking," he said in a low voice, "about what is to come." "What do you mean by that?" "This world is a dangerous place. It will never be safe. And for as long as you are by my side, you will be a prize." His arms grew tighter around me. "I must know that you accept that you truly accept it." "I do." "Do you really?" He pulled away to look into my eyes. "Because this is not for a little while, Elena. This is not some phase we will move past. This is the man I am, the thing I am. I know. And you still want this. You still want me." I stared into his eyes and saw the raw emotion there, the real fear that I would finally understand what I was in and choose to leave. "Every single day," I said softly. "I choose you every single day." Some of the tension in his expression eased. "I am not worthy of you." "Probably not." I smiled. "But you are with me anyway." He kissed me, slow and deep, and I lost myself completely. 2 weeks later, everything shifted again. I was in the kitchen preparing coffee when I heard raised voices from Dante's office. Angry voices. I crept closer, not wanting to eavesdrop but unable to stop myself. "You cannot be serious. That was Marco." "I am completely serious." Dante sounded exhausted. "It is the only option. You would surrender everything you have built for her?" Silence. Then Dante said quietly, "Yes." My heart stopped beating. "The other families will not permit it," said another voice, one of Dante's lieutenants. "They will see it as weakness." "I do not care what they see." Dante's voice was firm. "I am finished. I am getting out." "Getting out?" Marco sounded stunned. "You cannot just leave this life. Watch me." I backed away from the door, my thoughts racing. He was leaving, surrendering his empire. Because of me. That night, I confronted him. "I overheard you today," I said quietly, "speaking with Marco." He became very still. "How much did you hear?" "Enough to know that you plan to give it all up." I moved closer to him. "Why?" "Because I want to have a life with you." His voice was unwavering. "A real life, where you are not constantly in fear, where I am not always looking over my shoulder." "Dante, you cannot do that for me. I am not doing it only for you. I am doing it for us." He took my hands in his. "I have spent my entire existence in this world. And for what? For power? For money? None of it has any meaning if I lose you." Tears stung my eyes. "What about all that you have created? I will hand it over to Marco. He is capable and loyal. The transfer will be clean. And you will just go. We will disappear. We can start again somewhere new. Build a life that is ours and ours alone." The offer was intoxicating, seductive, an ordinary life with Dante, far from the violence and peril. But I also saw what it would cost him, his life's work, and all the people he was responsible for. "I cannot let you do that," I said softly. His expression changed. "What?" "I cannot let you abandon who you are for my sake. It is too great a sacrifice." "Elena, you think I cannot see it? The way you come alive when you are conducting business, making choices, protecting your people." I touched his face. "That is a part of who you are. And I fell in love with all of you, not only the parts that would fit into an ordinary life." "You deserve ordinary," he said roughly. "Perhaps, but I chose extraordinary." I smiled through my tears. "I chose you." He was ready to burn down his whole world just for me. This was wrong. I was powerless to stop him, but I knew his kind of power was meant to protect, not to self-destruct. So I had to make him see. I pulled him close. "You cannot throw away your life for mine. We have to find a different solution." I spoke over him, not letting him interrupt. "Promise me, Dante. Promise me we will find another way." Conflict was clear in his eyes. Then, this dangerous man simply pulled me into his arms. He held me like I was the only thing keeping him on the ground. "I promise," he whispered into my hair. "We will find another way." The next morning, he was already dressed and sitting on the bed, just watching me wake up. "I have something for you," he said softly. He held out his hand. In his palm rested a small velvet box. My heart hammered in my chest. "Dante," he answered quickly, "this is not a proposal. Not yet. Not until I can give you the life that you deserve." He opened the box. It held a delicate ring, a simple band with a single perfect diamond. "But this is a promise." "A promise of what?" I asked. "That I am completely yours." His eyes found mine and held them. "It means that no matter what happens, no matter how dark our world gets, I will always come back to you." Warm tears fell down my cheeks as he slid the ring onto my finger. "I love you," he said quietly. I do not think I have said it out loud before. But I do. "I love you, Elena." "I love you too," I whispered back. He kissed me with a gentle reverence, and I felt his vow settle deep inside my soul. Later that day, I reached out to Clara. "I need to see you," I told her. We met at our old spot, but the silence between us felt like a huge canyon. It had only been a few weeks. "You look different," she observed. "I am different," I said. "Are you happy?" I thought about her question. I truly considered it. The danger, the fear, and the violence. But also the love, the security, and the feeling of being completely known by another person. "Yes," I said with honesty. "I am happy." She studied my face for a long moment before she nodded. "Then I am happy for you, even if I do not understand it." "Thank you." "But Elena." She reached across the small table and gripped my hand. "Promise me you will be careful. Promise me you will not lose your entire self to this." "I promise." It was a vow I fully intended to keep. But as I walked back to the car where Marco waited, the ring feeling heavy on my finger, I wondered if it was a promise I could truly uphold. Loving Dante meant entering his world, and I was starting to realize that his world did not let people go easily. 3 months later, I stood in Dante's office downtown, looking at the city lights. I felt like a completely different person from the girl who had stumbled into a mob execution at a wedding. That girl had been innocent, naive, and afraid of the shadows. This woman had learned to live in them. "You are thinking too hard again." I turned and found Dante leaning in the doorway, watching me with that intense look that still made my heart race. "Just reflecting," I said. He came into the room, putting his arms around me from behind. "On what? How much has changed? Any regrets?" "No." I leaned back into his embrace. "Surprisingly, no." And it was true. The gallery had hired a new person, and I had begun working from home as a consultant. My hours were less rigid, giving me more freedom to adapt to Dante's schedule. Claire and I still spoke sometimes. Our friendship was different, but it was still there. My life had completely reshaped itself around this new reality. And Dante had kept his promise. He had been finding ways to lessen the risk, making legitimate business moves to slowly transform his empire. It was a process that would take years, possibly a generation, but he was doing it. For me. For us. "There is something I have to tell you," he said softly. A knot of tension formed in my back. "What is it?" "I met with federal investigators today." A chill went through my veins. "What?" "They have been building a case, not against me, against some of my old associates." He turned me to look at him directly. "They want my testimony. And if you give it, then I am completely free. Immunity, witness protection, if we choose it. A fresh start." His eyes searched mine for a reaction. We could go away, begin a new life, be normal. It was the very thing he had wanted to give me months ago. The very thing I had told him not to sacrifice. "But," I asked, because I heard the hesitation in his tone. "But it requires betraying men who have been loyal to me, men who put their trust in me." His jaw hardened. "It requires me to become the one thing I have always hated, a rat." I knew the gravity of his words. In his world, loyalty was the ultimate law, betrayal was the ultimate crime. "What do you want to do?" I asked him gently. "I do not know." He pulled away from me, combing his fingers through his hair. "A part of me wants to accept the offer, to give you the life you should have. But another part of me cannot betray my own code." I finished his thought for him. "Yes." I went to him and took his hands in mine. "Then do not do it. I am serious. Do not take that deal if it means destroying your own soul." I looked up at him. "We will find a different solution. We always do. What if there is no other way? Then we will face the danger. We will keep building our life, piece by piece, until it is strong enough to weather any storm." He looked at me as if I were something precious and fragile and unbelievably courageous. "You would truly stay?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion, "knowing this life will not change?" "I told you months ago that I choose you. Nothing has changed that." He kissed me then, a kiss filled with desperation and gratitude. I could taste his relief, his fear, and his love all at once. "I do not deserve you," he whispered against my mouth. "You need to stop saying that." He laughed, a pure sound of happiness, and held me tighter. 2 weeks later, Dante refused the federal deal. The investigators were not pleased, but without his testimony, they had nothing on him. They moved on to new targets, and we felt a sense of relief. But that relief had a price. "There is talk," Marco told Dante one evening, during a meeting I was not meant to hear. "Some of the younger families believe you are growing soft. They say the girl has made you weak." "Let them think what they will," Dante replied calmly. "They might try to test you. Then I will give them a reminder of why they fear me." I moved away from the door, a knot tightening in my stomach. Even during quiet times, the threat of violence was always there. The test happened 1 month later. A shipment was taken. It was small and not very important, but it was a clear challenge to Dante's power. I watched him get ready for the meeting with the rival family. His face became a cold mask, the same one I remembered from our first meeting at the wedding. "Be careful," I said softly. "I always am." He kissed me gently, a contrast to the tension in his body. "I will be home by midnight. Promise. Promise." He was gone. I tried to keep busy with work, with television, with anything to stop my mind from imagining the worst. At 11:30, he came through the door. He was unhurt, but looked exhausted. "How did it go?" I asked. "It is handled. They will not challenge me again. I did not ask for details. I had learned not to look too closely at the darkness. He gathered me into his arms, and we just stood there in the silent house, holding on to each other. I love you, he said softly. I need you to understand that, no matter what comes, no matter what I must do, I love you. I know. I looked up at him. And I love you. All of you. The monster, too. You are not a monster, I told him firmly. You are a man protecting what belongs to him. He kissed me and then led me toward the bedroom. He showed me with his actions what his words could not fully convey. Later, as we lay tangled in the sheets, he spoke quietly. Marry me. I blinked, turning to face him. What? Not right now, not until our life is truly secure. But someday. His fingers drew light patterns on my skin. Marry me, Elena. Make this real. Tears welled up in my eyes. Are you certain? I have never been more certain about anything in my life. Yes, I whispered. Someday. Yes. He held me closer, and I drifted to sleep listening to the rhythm of his heart, the moonlight catching on the ring he had given me. 6 months later, our life had found a rhythm that felt almost normal. I began teaching art history part-time at a local college. Dante had successfully moved more of his operations into legitimate businesses. We hosted dinner parties with Marco and some of Dante's less dangerous associates. We spoke about our future, about a proper wedding, maybe even children one day. But the shadow was never completely gone. I could see it in the way Dante was always aware of his surroundings. I saw it in how Marco and the other guards were never truly at ease. They were always on alert. It was in the hushed phone calls that would make Dante's face turn cold. This was the life we had. It was beautiful and it was dangerous. It was loving and it was violent. It was normal and completely extraordinary. Do you ever miss your old life? Dante asked one night as we watched the sunset from our terrace. Sometimes, I confessed. I miss the simplicity, the feeling of being safe. Would you return to it if you had the chance? I considered it. I truly thought about the person I was before that wedding. She was smaller, safer, but less alive. No, I said with certainty. I would not change a single thing. He pulled me into his arms and kissed my temple. Even after everything it cost you? Especially because of what it cost me. I looked up at him. Because it led me to you. Epilogue. 1 year after the wedding that altered my world, I stood before a mirror in another dress. This one was white, elegant, and simple. Clara was next to me, fixing my veil. We had repaired our friendship slowly, with care, building a new foundation. You look beautiful, she said softly. I am terrified, I confessed. Terrified of marrying him, and of how badly I want this. She smiled gently. That is how you know it is real. I knew Dante was waiting downstairs. We were having a small, private ceremony with only the people closest to us. We were making permanent what had felt certain since our very first kiss. I touched the ring on my finger, the promise he made months ago. It would soon have a wedding band to match. Ready? Clara asked. I took a deep breath. I thought of everything that brought me to this moment. The danger, the fear, and the violence, but also the love, the protection, and the feeling of being seen for who I truly was. Yes, I said, I am ready. And I walked downstairs to marry the man who had changed my entire life. He taught me that love did not need to be safe to be true. He showed me that sometimes the most beautiful things can grow from darkness. And I learned that choosing to stay, when it was hard and when it was dangerous, was the most courageous thing I had ever done. Elena's story teaches us that we don't need to be rescued to find love. Sometimes love finds us in the darkest places, and the person who sees all of our shadows and still chooses to stay, that's the person worth fighting for. True courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing love anyway. Thank you for staying until the very end. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs this message today, and subscribe to join our growing family. Your support means everything to us.